I'll introduce our wonderful hostess and MC today, Christina Aguilera. She is the chair of our advisory council for the Leah Zallman Center for Immigrant Health Research.
Yes. So should I get started, Jess?
Let's do this.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I see people from all over the country and of course, so many friends and partners in this movement for immigrant rights and immigrant opportunities and good research that can advance all of these opportunities. Thank you for putting your names and where you're coming from. The chat is just really such a journey to get here, and such a incredible honor to be able to extend the legacy of Dr. Leah Zallman with all of you today, and under the leadership of my dear friend and brilliant researcher, Jess Santos. And so let's get started. Welcome, everybody. I just wanted to give you a warm welcome, but also let you know that this meeting is being recorded. This is, again, the moment of culmination of a lot of work, a lot of hard work that has been, again, a beautiful combination of Dr. Leah Zallman's regional vision for a research center focused on immigrant health, and Dr. Jessica Santos' leadership in bringing this vision to fruition to an accomplished center. And you will hear a lot more about what the center is all about in a few minutes, but I would like to kick us off by inviting all of you here today. Again, it's very excited to see how many people decided to jump on board and welcome the center and hear more about it, and hear from our keynotes, hear from the director. And so now that I have you all here, I can't miss the opportunity of having a little bit of a cheer with everybody together and take a group picture out of this Zoom technology to be able to memorialize this really powerful day for all of us. So if I will invite all of you to please turn on your video for just 1 second and join us into a good cheer. And I'm gonna, on the count of 3, I'm gonna do a little countdown so that you can give us your best cheer, your best claps, your most enthusiastic screams, so that we can get this started today, okay? So turn on your videos, and we're gonna have some of our teammates, Danny and Emily, take some pictures of that and memorialize this really incredible day. At the count of 3, okay? 1, 2, take off the mute button, unmute. This is the time to make a big party of this. And 3, Leah Zallman Center.
Congratulations.
Awesome job.
Congratulations.
Gratulieren.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining into that. So now that we're all warmed up and we've heard from all of you, I would love to just start the program. So Emily's going to help us by spotlighting our first speakers for the day. And I have the real pleasure of moderating a conversation with 3 incredible people about the real inspiration behind and the vision for this research center. Dr. David Bohr is the Chief Academic Officer at Cambridge Health Alliance and Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School. Sophia Ladner is a Research and Evaluation Project Manager at the Institute for Community Health. And Dr. Jessica Santos, Director of the Leah Zallman Center for Immigrant Health Research. So now that I have you all with me, what a privilege. Let's start by talking about Leah, a doctor, researcher, mother, daughter, friend, and much more. I would love to ask you all 3 to speak to the same questions. I'm going to ask specific questions and learn a little bit of your perspectives. And to get started, the first one will be, what do you admire the most about Dr. Leah Zallman?
So I'll take it first. First, I have to say, I'm just thrilled to be here. This is just awesome. So Leah had it all. She had the vitality, she had incredible empathy and a commitment to justice. So let me talk about those. So on her vitality, Leah lit up the room when she entered. She had this broad smile and spoke quickly, kind of an allegro, and she even chuckled with a musical cadence. She never seemed tired despite managing a family and a medical practice and a research agenda and administrative tasks and on and on. Second, about her ability to connect. She loved her medical practice and her patients, who were mainly immigrants, they loved her. She once came to see me for advice about an interesting job offer. She discoursed all that intrigued her about that job. I sat and listened, and then I said, I have one question to ask you. How do you feel about giving up your primary care practice? Leah paused. She told me I gave her a lot to think about, and she abruptly ended the conversation. I never heard another word about that job offer. Her patient's stories really gave her the grounding for her advocacy. And that same skill, that interpersonal skill, led her to connect with immigrant rights groups, with researchers, with funders, with colleagues, with administrative officials at the hospital, locally and nationally. She was a great networker. About her sense of justice, Marcy, Leah's mom, enjoys reminding us all that Leah was born in Panama City on International Human Rights Day. She wrote in her fellowship application and again in her curriculum vitae, quote, I have a deep belief, something like this, a deep belief that I have a role to play in elevating the voices of the most vulnerable. And she had this commitment to family. We'd open our research meetings during Leah's first pregnancy to tell happy delivery stories. Then to repay us, she'd regale us with stories of Eli and Kai and of course of Nadav. She just beamed when she spoke of family. She loved being a mother and a spouse. Somehow, I don't know, Leah did it all. I'd occasionally ask her about work-life, home balance. She'd smile and thank me for my concern. Then she'd wave me off with a no problem. She just showed the same nonchalance, this humility, when she was lauded for her work informally or when she received major awards like CHA's Academic Council Award. She was really quite amazing. Sophia, take it away.
Thanks, David. So I had the privilege of working with Leah for about 1.5 years at ICH. She was incredibly energetic. The days that she was in the office, you could just see her running around from one side of the office to the other, even though she was just so physically small, but you could just see her from the top of the cube running around. And I was able to talk to other ICH folks as I was preparing to speak at this, and we all agreed that Leah was a natural mentor. It really felt like you could go to Leah for anything. She was always willing to teach and focus on your growth. I remember specifically myself and another colleague at the time, Salon, who's here. We started expressing interest in wanting to continue a career in medicine and preparing to apply to medical school. And she immediately, without a thought, started talking to us about her own path and would spend every meeting with us talking about our goals. Leah also prioritized wellness and the whole person. She wouldn't overburden and would make sure that we were well and would take things off of our plate, even the smallest tasks that she would help the team with. She also had the ability to handle really difficult situations with our projects and would make anyone in her team feel confident when we were there. I remember her always pushing us to speak up for ourselves and for our research. So it always felt like she was on our side. And like David mentioned, Leah really did it all. Not only did she create incredible work and she was amazing to work with, but she also made time to socialize and be silly and have fun. She would prioritize getting lunch or going out for beers after finishing a report or submitting a paper, even though we knew that she had like 1 million things to do. We also went to an escape room one time together as part of an ICH social outing. And it took our team, more like it took Leah because she was the one solving all of the puzzles. It took us 20 tries just to complete one escape room when all the children there were completing like 10 escape rooms at a time. And I know that everyone at ICH remembers the time that she shared with us her fun fact, which was that she was able to belch the alphabet. So it was really nice getting to know just different parts of Leah and her life. So to wrap up, I admired Leah for so many things, including her dedication to her work and the people around her, how strong-willed she was, her curiosity, but especially the way she was able to make everyone around her feel seen and heard and just special.
Thank you, Sophia. She was clearly an incredible person. And Jess, I know that you didn't work directly with Leah, but you have learned a lot about her since you started your position last fall. So can you help us understand how is Leah's legacy being carried forward in the center?
Sure. And thanks again, everyone, for being here. I'm so honored and thrilled to be in this role. I really think of Leah as my co-director in spirit. I've gotten to know her in my own way, just by talking to so many of you, by reading her work, by seeing how she thinks, and I really admire her. I think we'll be carrying her legacy forward, both through the way we do our work, the way we do our research, and the focus of the research itself. I think first, I wanted to note how incredibly welcome I have felt here from day one. From the minute I started researching the Institute for Community Health and Leah and this role and this idea of a center, I was welcomed with such an authentic mutual respect and generosity of spirit by Leah's family, many of whom are here, Marcy, Nadav, Shayna, Amy, and others. The leadership at ICH, at the Institute for Community Health, I want to thank for really taking a leap and making this center happen in Leah's honor. And that's really speaks to the executive core team, Sarah, Emily, Alan, Louisa. They've answered so many questions, probably more questions than they imagined possible from me in the last couple of months. Again, that open, kind, graceful generosity. I'll add the Institute for Community Health staff, who are incredibly skilled researchers, and I've had the pleasure to start working with already on a couple of our projects that we've gotten off the ground in the first couple of months. And then the board and the Cambridge Health Alliance leadership. And so that is Leah's legacy, that welcome, that feel of respect and generosity, of knowledge and curiosity, and just openly saying, hey, let's do this together. That's Leah's legacy. This is a collective effort. I want every immigrant to feel that level of welcome, that level of respect when they step foot on US soil here. In fact, I was trying to remember when the last time was that I felt that welcome somewhere, and they've all been outside of the United States. So we want to cultivate, my vision is really to cultivate that feel, that environment, that experience at our center for everyone who works here and with us, by centering immigrant voices, by forming authentic partnerships with immigrant advocates and policymakers, funders, healthcare providers, and more. That type of research is pretty unique. It's hard to find a place where you can do that deep community engaged style of research. And the only reason it's possible at this center is because of all of the donations that were given right up front to make this center a reality. I'm so grateful. I want to say thank you so much to everybody who has donated so far to this center. And if you are here today and you have the means and you would like to donate, I'm asking you to give and to really sustain that style and that legacy in the level of engagement that we'll have with community going forward. The way that I wanted to end is just by saying that in addition to the style of research we do and how we do our work, the other way that I see us carrying Leah's legacy forward is just in our focus on systems Leah knew that health is more than what happens in the doctor's office. And she understood that health is how our society is structured, right? And our research agenda at the center reflects that. So our research will focus on policies, narratives, institutional practices, the impact of immigrants on community health, and the environmental factors that shape welcoming, equitable environments for all of us. So I look forward to doing this work together with many of you for the next many years. And I'll pass it back to David to add anything you want to Leah's legacy going forward.
Sure. I have to say, Jess, we're so lucky to have you. So Leah's legacy, I'd say first and foremost, the center should be true to her personal and family values. The work you did, Jess, in collecting those values from family and friends as you are inaugurating the center, I think that should be the legacy. And those are joy, rigor, generosity, collaboration, equity, and impact. I think the activities will be motivated by a yearning for justice and with the kind of insatiable curiosity that Leah had. Let me give an example. Leah was just furious about the right wing's lies and false arguments that immigrants strain America's resources. And these are the lies that Trump rode into the presidency. So Leah set out to document the truth. Her first paper with us was published in Health Affairs. She demonstrated that immigrants contribute over $100 trillion more than they take out of Medicare over the course of 8 years at the beginning of this century. So immigrants subsidize Medicare for the US born. Then she wondered about, well, what about the privately insured? Same story, another paper. And then what about the undocumented? Same story. Immigrants subsidize the healthcare for the US born, another paper. Then she also documented immigrants' contribution that they contribute disproportionately to the healthcare workforce. 20% of all healthcare workers and 25% or nearly 25% of long-term care workers are immigrants, and how critical they were during the COVID surges. So you get the picture. It's the legacy will be to yearn for justice and be guided also by curiosity. One last thing, the center was Leah's dream. No one expects you, Jess, to be Leah. But knowing Jess for the little while that I have, it's so clear that you share Leah's values, her energy, her creativity, and yearning for justice. She would be thrilled to be here today. I can see her smile, her chuckle, her dreams about to come true. It's great.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Jess. Well, I don't think I have much more to add, but I'd love to just wrap up with a 1 minute, like fire speed comment on what will success look like for the Leah Zallman Center moving forward. David.
I go back to where we started, what we most admired in Leah. We'd be successful if we could mirror her vitality, her empathy, and deep commitment to justice. And we'd be successful if we could commit to methodological excellence and aim for impact.
Sophia.
I agree with David. I think we'll be successful if the core values of ICH and the center are kept and pushed. If we're able to honor the work that Leah did to get to this point, but also look for new opportunities and ways to elevate voices and issues of people in our community.
Thank you. And Jess.
Just adding a few things to what's already been said, I think to grow the capacity of immigrant scholars, a pipeline of immigrant scholars for the future, to have an educational presence out in the community and public, to build a really strong, robust network, and to directly advance immigrant economic and health justice.
All right. Well, with such a clear vision and all of us right behind you, I'm confident that the future of the center will be very successful, which is why when Jess asked me to help convene and chair an advisory council for the new center, I said yes right away. And you will see now in our screen some of our advisory council members, and it's been recently established, and they're already right there helping us lead this work. We had our first meeting in January and had a great conversation. And the question that we posed was, what gives you hope in the power of community engaged research to advance immigrant health? We heard so many great answers. They all share some of their take on this. And I would love to highlight a few of this here as you see them on the screen. The commitment and collaboration of immigrant communities, researchers, and advocates. And I'd love to invite one of our, well, there she is. Ayat Elawad is one of our advisory council members. Can you share with us what gives you hope in the power of community engaged research to advance immigrant health?
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for introducing me. So as the slide says, I have hope in ensuring that the voices of immigrants are being heard and considered. My name is Ayat Alaud, and I'm the Director of Health Equity at ACEDON, which is a long acronym that stands for African Community Economic Development of New England. I was given the opportunity to join the advisory council by Jessica Santos, so thank you. And the main goal of all the work that I do is eliminating health disparities within the African community in the greater Boston area. And this also involves working very closely with many African immigrants and with Inequity Now and Beyond Coalition, which is a group of 5 immigrant-led organizations. I did not have the honor of meeting Leah personally. However, I'm excited to join the center as part of the advisory council and continue the amazing work that she started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayat. So we will also love to hear from all of you that you might not be able to see your faces in the picture, but we know that you're all there, and we would love to see in the chat your own answer to what are your greatest hopes for 2022. So please put your thoughts, some answers in the chat. It can be a word, it can be a sentence. What are your greatest hopes? And again, what we share first with and asked everyone was to really just from their heart, how can we advance immigrant health with community engaged research, and what are your greatest hope for 2022? So let me see who has answered. I'm going to the chat. I see some friends. Anyone wants to take a shot at answering what are your greatest hopes for 2022 with respect to immigrant health research and advancing immigrant health? Getting meaningful co-developed studies off the ground to advance immigrant health and well-being. And I love that because as you know, I'm all about partnerships, and everybody that I see here, I know that has worked so hard to advance the opportunities for immigrants, and building partnerships. I know we can go a lot further, and there are some great opportunities for that. And as you can see in this poem that we chose, that I have to give a shout out to Ronnie Miller from the Rian Immigrant Center and my colleagues that I know are here as well, that shared this poem with us because it came so fitting. As I'm not going to read it for you because it's right there in the slide, but take a second to read it, and I'll keep sharing some of the answers in the comments. Thank you, Emily. To promote and empower immigrants as healthcare researchers, providers, and leaders. I see Sophia, Denzel, Kish, Krish, Bridget, thank you all for putting your comments there. We'll definitely want to collect those and include them in some of our website and communication, because this is a collaborative effort. This is not one side, but multi-direction to make sure that together we can really tackle the most pressing needs for research, so that opportunities and resources and policies can be advanced for immigrant communities. I know that we're all like, many of us are biting our nails waiting for tomorrow's resolution of the driver's license bill for immigrants. There are just so many things that you all have worked so hard for. And I think partnerships with this center would be incredible to advance all of this. All right, so now I know many of you have come here today because you know that you're gonna hear from three incredible keynote speakers. They are here today. They're really good friends of our movement and this causes. And I'm going to introduce them to you briefly. We have Sam Young, Krish O'Mara, Vignarak, and Denzel Mohammed, my good friend. Now, prior to serving, hold on one second. Yes, prior to serving in the roles he holds, that Sam holds right now, he was an advocate and consultant. He had worked for the Massachusetts House Speaker, Robert DeLeo, for 4 years, served as chairperson of the Massachusetts Asian American Commission, has a master's in public policy with concentration in poverty alleviation, as well as a master's in business administration with a focus on social impact, both at Brandeis University's Heller School for Social Policy and Management. Sam is an active advocate for the Asian American community, and I will just make sure that you get to hear from him more than from me. Thank you, Sam. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. I'm just, incredibly excited and honored to be here and be in community with you all. I just want to make sure that, I am not here in any official capacity outside of just as a supporter of the work that Jess does in the Leah Zallman Center and especially for immigrants. And so I am not in an official capacity, but here as a supporter. And I'm just really grateful to be in community with you all. For those of you, and honestly, that's probably most of you who don't know me, my name is Sam Hyun, and I am the son of Korean immigrants. And like many children of immigrants, have had to play several roles in my household when I was growing up. Much of it was because my parents didn't fully understand the systems of a foreign country. This is a struggle that too many immigrant families still endure. And whether it's understanding how to navigate the immigration system or knowing how the political process works, how does one sign up for healthcare, these life-altering decisions become even more of a challenge when there isn't enough support. When even signing up for your child for Little League becomes a challenge, when that causes anxiety. One of my most vivid memories is when I asked my mom to sign me up for Little League. By the age of 10, I had completely fallen in love with baseball. Watching Pedro Martinez, Mo Vaughn, Nomar, Hideo Nomo, all immigrants themselves, when they starred for our beloved Red Sox, I'm assuming you're all Red Sox fans, because if you're not, then we have an issue. But when they starred for our beloved Red Sox, I was hooked, and I desperately wanted to call Fenway Park my home, my office. I had the opportunity to go onto the field a few years ago, and did I kiss the Green Monster? Yes, I did. I did kiss the Green Monster. But that's how much I love this game. And I begged my mom, and who, bless her heart, somehow, some way, found a way to sign me up. And mind you, this is pre-Google. So you actually had to go talk to people. You actually had to ask people for help. You had to go and approach them. And when she came home, she told me that she signed up for Little League. I was so thrilled. And she did this in spite of her broken English. And she did this despite her anxieties of speaking to people, because she was afraid of them not understanding her. She was afraid of them of getting the wrong answers, of not being able to do it correctly, or how people will perceive her because of the language barrier. And she did this because of her love for me and her love for her child. And that superseded her anxieties and her fears. And this is what so many immigrant parents do, in spite of the challenges and the fears and the anxieties and the stress that they endure. So of course, when she told me, I was absolutely thrilled, until she said that it was for Newton South Little League. And I was floored, because she signed me up for the wrong league. And I was told by my other 9, 10-year-old friends that it was Newton Little League. So here I was throwing a tantrum, screaming, crying, like, Mom, you just destroyed my life. How am I going to play for the Red Sox? I'm playing for the wrong Little League. What in the world is Newton South Little League? I was devastated. But it turns out that I was wrong. Newton had so many kids who wanted to play, had so many resources that there were 5 leagues in total, and I was signed up for the right one. But it was not knowing the system, not knowing the rules, that causes so much stress and anxiety for immigrant families, that adds on to the additional challenges of already difficult responsibility of raising a family, that even something as simple as signing up for a Little League can be an incredible strain on the entire family as a whole, let alone the far more daunting adversities that immigrant families have to persevere through to survive, let alone thrive. And this is why the center and the work that is done here is so critical. Research to truly understand the communities that desperately need better services and support is an absolute necessity. But as important is the need for accurate data. Much of my work and my research at Heller and in my professional life has been centered on the AAPI community, and specifically to combat the rise in anti-Asian violence and hatred that we've experienced since the pandemic has begun. And a quick stat is from March 19, 2020 to September 30th, 2021, a total of 10,370 hate incidents against Asian Americans and Pacific Islander persons were reported to stop AAPI hate. Mind you, this is simply just to one organization that I would bet that still vast majority of the population still isn't aware of, but this is just reported over 10,000. But we don't just suffer from physical and verbal violence. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the murder of Christine Yuna Lee that happened the other day in New York City, or Michelle Go that happened last month. We don't just suffer from violence in that sense. Our community also faces the largest racial wealth gap. We are consistently ignored by the government and philanthropy. Here's a number for you, 0.01, all right? Not 0.1, 0.01 of all philanthropic dollars have gone to AAPI organizations. 0.01. We make up nearly 9% of the population, but we get 0.01. The model minority myth, perpetual foreigner narrative, and being the invisible race erases the fact that we come from 21 different countries across Asia. We speak dozens of different languages. We have different cultural traditions, religious beliefs, food, experiences, which all get erased when we're treated as a monolith or erased completely from data sets that are used in research, which I have seen time and time again. That is also violence because it prevents my community from being seen and understood in ways that we desperately need. It exacerbates the longstanding problems around housing security, mental health access, food insecurity, among a myriad of other issues that we are constantly trying to fight through. And this is why the center, with its spirit, purpose, and unapologetic declaration to fight for immigrants is so powerful and necessary. And if I know Jess Santos, I have no doubt that the legacy and inspiration that we draw from Leah Zallman will continue to advance the needs of immigrants across the Commonwealth and ultimately the country. And which is why I'm so honored to be here to celebrate this transformative day and to show love to a leader, a mentor, and a friend to us all, Jess Santos.
Thank you very much, Sam. And you don't need to pin me, Emily. You can go straight to Krish while I introduce her. Krish O'Mara Vignarak is the president and CEO of the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. She previously served in the Obama administration as policy director for the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and at the State Department as senior advisor under Secretaries Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. Before joining the White House, she practiced law at Jenner & Block in Washington, D.C., clerk for Chief Judge Michael Boudin in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, and she taught at Georgetown University. I would love to just also share that she has been recognized as one of the Daily Record's top 50 influential Marylanders, top 100 women and most admired CEOs, as well as a 2021 Woman to Watch by the Baltimore Sun. So please welcome and join us. Krish, we can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you, Christina, for that really kind introduction. Thank you for giving me the chance to sit in and learn a little bit about a clearly beloved Leah Zallman. So let me just first say good afternoon. I'm really so grateful to be here. My name is Krisha Mayer Vignaraja. I serve as President and CEO of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, LIRS is the largest faith-based national nonprofit dedicated exclusively to immigrants and refugees. We're headquartered in Baltimore, but with a national network of partners, including the Essentia Care Alliance in Massachusetts. So our work ranges from refugee resettlement to economic integration, care for unaccompanied children and their sponsors. We work very closely with the State Department, with Health and Human Services, but really, our impact and our hope is to try to meet the needs of our clients in all the different ways that I think we all know that we see. I, like Sam, wanted to start with my own personal connection to this issue because I too am an immigrant. So part of why I have felt so grateful to work at a national organization that is headquartered in Baltimore is because my own personal connection. So I was 9 months old when my parents fled a civil war in Sri Lanka and came to the US. At that time, they really, because we were part of the ethnic and religious minority, were seeking refuge in any country that would take us. Really the only option, because my parents were teachers, was Nigeria, because Nigerian schools had actually sent recruiters to Sri Lanka. And because both of my parents were teachers, we had a chance for them to land jobs, and that was their way out. So we had our bags packed, plane tickets in hand, ready to move to Nigeria, and specifically northern Nigeria, where I'm sure many of you know 276 girls got kidnapped simply for going to school. So I know that we were lucky because I guess you could say we hit the jackpot, and my parents got a chance to sort of tear up those plane tickets and move to the US. And we settled in Baltimore because my parents were educators. I know because the community embraced us. We came from a tropical island at a time when we were about to face our first winter, and it was churches and temples and local community organizations that dressed us with winter clothes. It was neighbors who would babysit as my parents were looking for jobs. It was the superintendent of the Baltimore City Public Schools who literally found us the basement apartment that we moved into. It was the vice principal of the school who literally helped us kind of move our bags in, vouched for my parents when they opened a bank account. And I know that, for me, part of why this work is so important is because in many ways, aside from the indigenous community and those who were forced to migrate through slavery, so many of us have an immigrant story. And so when we talk about this work, the truth is, I know someone mentioned just the vitriol and the hatred and the fear mongering that we face. But we can't forget the fact that, we are a nation of immigrants, and that is a strength, not a weakness. But the truth is that for us to convey to people that, they are really us, it involves stories and it involves statistics. And that's why I think I'm really excited to participate, because this is why the launch of the Leah Zallman Center means so much. At LIRS, we've seen firsthand how important immigrant-focused research is in terms of not just helping us provide quality care, but also providing the data to show that this is a win-win situation, right? It is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do for us as a country. And increasingly, we are relying on the voices of immigrants and refugees rather than the edicts of long-held government programs to inform how we approach immigration and refugee resettlement and to advance practice and policy. And so a research partnership with the Institute of Community Health on our New American Cities program allows us to evaluate the immigrant and refugee employment landscape and to learn how we can best serve our clients through community health, belonging, economic empowerment, supporting career pathways that allow them to not just survive, but really to thrive. And so, you know, we believe that a more holistic refugee and immigrant driven system is not only possible, but it's necessary. But we cannot transform the system, you know, as we know it without the data to back it up. And that's why centers like this are really so critical. And so, you know, I guess I'll just note that this is particularly important within the scope of immigrant health. As we all know, and as Leah's work proved, immigrant health encompasses far more than ensuring new Americans are caught up on vaccinations or getting treatment for a sinus infection. Though sometimes even accessing that simple healthcare can be difficult. As we've seen through, you know, the chilling effects of the public charge rule and other perceived threats during the COVID-19 pandemic, and which the Institute of Community Health has also explored. You know, immigrant health is also about the less obvious determinants of mental and physical health. It's partly why I put in the chat box that my hope for 2022 is that we expand the kinds of services. It's about having a stable job, enough money to feed families, the energy to support their children in school, managing stress caused by uncertain legal status, anxiety over family and friends who are still in their home countries, you know, even the xenophobia and the racism faced in daily life that we know so many of our immigrant clients are facing. And I think of the many newly arrived Afghans that LIRS has helped to resettle in the past several months. While they received any needed medical treatment when they arrived in the US, many of them still face post-traumatic stress from the chaotic evacuation. And we know that that is just one piece of it, right? They felt trauma and they felt stress in Afghanistan, the uncertainty of whether they would access the Kabul airport, the uncertainty of that trip through the so-called lily pads, waiting on military bases in third countries, and then finally getting to the US, and then they were on military bases for umpteen months, unsure of when they would actually finally get to their final destination. And that's why LRS has now begun to provide mental health services for Afghan children and families out of our Baltimore offices. But that is just one small corner of a massive national issue. The need for intensive trauma-informed research and evaluation has never been higher. And we need to understand how these circumstances affect the mental and physical health of immigrants and refugees in the short term, in the long term, if we want to advance programming and promote equity and thriving. But most importantly, we need to be involved and uplift the voices of refugees and immigrants themselves. And that's where I just think that this center, you know, just even the group of panelists you have invited to speak speaks to that. So I'll just end by saying I am excited to see how the work you do in this center can change immigration in the United States as we know it. It is obviously such a timely moment because we know that this is an issue that will not go away, that it will become, you know, for better or worse, front and center, as there are many dynamics that are involved. So I just want to end by saying thank you so much for inviting me here today. And I look forward to the further partnership with Jess and the rest of the center, and hope that, you know, as the pandemic travel allows, that I'll have a chance to visit, maybe not during the winter months. I spent a year in Boston and realized that the tropical blood coursing through my veins is maybe better equipped to visit closer to springtime or summer, but hopefully I'll get a chance to sit down and meet with some of you in person. Look forward to it. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Krish. Thank you very much. And I'm gonna pass it to our next speaker, my dear friend Denzel Mohammed, the director of the Immigrant Learning Center's Public Education Institute, right there in Malden, right by our center. And in his role, he manages specialized online education, local and national research initiatives, and collaborative public events that educate Americans on immigrants and immigration in the US. He's been published by the New England Journal of Higher Education and co-authored the 2021 research report, Immigrant Essential Workers During the COVID-19 Pandemic. He serves on advisory board of the Massachusetts New Americans Integration Institute and the Mayor's Office for immigrant advancement. And with that said, I know there's a lot more to be said about you, but we'd love to have you for the next 5 minutes sharing your keynote. Welcome, Denzel.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much, Dr. Santos. It's great to be with all of you, meeting some of you for the first time, Krish and Sam. Some of the things that have been brought up are really close to my heart as an immigrant. Sam, you talk about AAPI, here as an Asian from the Afro-Caribbean. What's my identity? But the goals of this institute to grow the capacity of immigrant scholars and directly advance immigrant and economic and health justice are very important for me as an immigrant and working in this field. And what I really wanted to bring up today was to bring it into this moment of the pandemic and to see how what impacts immigrants impacts all Americans. So the research study that Christina just mentioned, immigrant essential workers during the COVID-19 pandemic that we brought out just a couple of months ago, showed some really fascinating things that I think I would like to share with you. The fact is, immigrants make up just 13.7% of our population, and yet they are outsized in their roles as healthcare workers, as agricultural workers, food processing workers, meat packing workers, all of the industries deemed essential during the pandemic, immigrants were overrepresented in them. And yet, you know, they went out to work every day as home health aides, working in nursing homes, picking fruits despite wildfires in California, in meat packing plants in Nebraska, where there were massive outbreaks of COVID. And they weren't taken care of by their employers. They weren't given safety equipment that they needed. They weren't given accurate instructions on how to access proper healthcare. Many of them, of course, under the Trump administration were afraid to access healthcare. And there was that chilling effect, similar to the public charge rule that Chris just brought up. 13.7% of our total population, and yet 18.3% of our essential workforce. Imagine if that didn't exist. 65% of essential workers are US born, 69% are foreign born, and 74% are undocumented. And because of that little thing called status, despite working every day during a global health crisis, they were not taken care of by the CARES Act. They were not taken care of by many state governments. And it forced a lot of people to reconcile with the fact that their status as immigrants or undocumented people compounded the stress that we all felt during the pandemic. Many of them shared in our research report that, what one quote was, "I was afraid because my parents had COVID, all of my family had COVID. And I was like, if they don't get paid, who's going to pay the bills? I don't want to feel like I felt when the pandemic first started. I felt like my family was in a very vulnerable state." And this happened across the country. The social safety nets that immigrants are paying into, as David pointed out earlier, the same things that they're subsidizing, they didn't qualify for. And what happened was, it made immigrants less prepared to help all of us get through this pandemic. It made us get through it more slowly, less efficiently, less effectively. Imagine if they were given the same kinds of privileges, statuses, benefits, and securities as the rest of us did when we were getting, stimulus payments directly into our bank accounts. Imagine if they felt supported by the general public. We were all outside beating pans and pots, but immigrants felt largely invisible. They felt very invisible in that hero narrative of essential workers, because we were seeing physicians and nurses on posters, not the people picking our apples and our vegetables and our fruits, not the people who were working in the meat processing plants, not the people who were working behind the scenes, stocking grocery shelves. They didn't see themselves in that narrative either. So what resulted was a nation that was more unprepared because of politics, because of how we've politicized immigration. And that is why I think that the kinds of research that will come out of this new center is important, because the narrative that we need to get out there is that what affects immigrants affects all Americans. We cannot take care of one group and not take care of others, because we all impact each other. And the fact that immigrants are more likely to be essential to our economic and physical well-being really drives that point home that the kinds of community participatory research that we need needs to push that narrative. Chris mentioned that we were a nation of immigrants under Trump. That was removed from the USCIS's website. They have a new mission now, which is much more aligned with what we are talking about today. But accessing that research, generating narratives of immigrant essential workers, about immigrants' health, about their impact on American lives, please, let's get that out there. Thank you.
Let's do it, Denzel. Thank you very much. So for all of you, it's been really great to hear your words, very inspiring to see how you find hope and power through the words and the work that you all do. And I think we all felt a little bit of that for those of you who joined us last Wednesday during our ribbon cutting event. And we'll love to show a short clip from that day so that you can experience the excitement that we had. And then we'll hear from Sarah Jalbert, our Executive Director at the Institute for Community Health, for some final words. Let's welcome again the Executive Director of the Institute for Community Health to close down our event, Sarah Jalbert.
Thanks so much, Christina. And from all of us at the Institute for Community Health, thank you so much for attending this official launch of the Leah Zallman Center. So to close, I'd like to read an excerpt from an essay that Leah wrote in honor of National Immigrants Day in October of 2020. To read the full essay, you can go to our website where it's posted. Leah wrote, "For 1 in 7 Americans, the story of immigration is a firsthand story, one that they personally experienced, often leaving lands, peoples, and cultures they love. For 1 in 4 children in the US, it's a story of a parent who came to the US to make a better life. And for many of us, the story dates back many more generations." This National Immigrants Day comes at a time when our country deeply relies on immigrants and at the same time is advancing policies that are harmful to immigrants and threaten the health of US-born individuals. It comes at a time when our interconnectedness with humanity across the globe has been made clear by a pandemic that's affected all of our lives. And this day is a reminder of how voicing our opinions through our electoral system is critical for the future of our country. My grandmother impressed upon me to never take voting for granted, as she reminded me her parents never could. Her voice will be echoing in my mind when I cast my vote on November 3rd. The accident that caused Leah's death occurred just a few days after she wrote these words, as she walked home from casting that vote. Her hope for the future and her passion for justice have shaped every aspect of the creation of the Leah Zallman Center. At ICH, the host of the Leah Zallman Center and part of the Cambridge Health Alliance, we're so grateful that you've all chosen to join us in making this center a reality. To find out ways that you can stay in touch, get involved, and support the center, you can visit the links shown on the screen. And thank you again so much for celebrating this special day with us. We hope to stay in touch with you for many, many years in the future.
That was beautiful, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. And now I will welcome Dr. Jess Santos again to for a couple of final words. But once again, I hope you all enjoyed the really, really wonderful people that were able to share today, the excitement that we have on the launch of the center and share a few words. And I hope you remain engaged and build partnerships so that this work can really be actionable and come into bring opportunities and advance immigrant health.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to all of our speakers today. It was wonderful to see you all here. Our work is only as valuable as its impact, so stay in touch. Let's do this together.